Your employment at Riverside Children's Medical Center is terminated effective immediately. Your badge.
Wait, I can explain. I saved the kid.
They took her badge like it was nothing. 11 years. Gone in 4 seconds. The security guard wouldn't look at her face. He stood in the hallway of Riverside Children's Medical Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Eyes fixed on the floor, hands clasped in front of him like he was attending a funeral. Kezia Malone stood in front of him, still wearing her scrubs. Soft teal. The ones with the small ink stain on the right cuff from the pen that had exploded in her pocket 3 months ago. Her stethoscope hung around her neck. Her ID badge was clipped to her chest pocket. Kezia Malone. Pediatric Unit. Riverside Children's Medical Center. She had worn that badge every single day for 11 years. The security guard reached forward and unclipped it. "Ma'am, I need your badge and access card. Hospital policy." Kezia watched him take it. Then her name disappeared into his palm. 11 years folded into a fist. Behind the security guard, Hospital Administrator Preston Holt stood with a manila folder and a look on his face like he was disciplining someone beneath him. He was 49 years old, 6'2", built lean and angular, all sharp lines and no warmth. His skin was a smooth, deep brown, polished like something that had never been touched. His head was shaved. His jaw was cut clean. His eyes were the kind of eyes that calculated everything and felt absolutely nothing. He wore a charcoal suit, white shirt, dark tie pulled so tight it looked like punishment. "Ms. Malone," Preston said, his voice flat as pavement. "Your employment at Riverside Children's Medical Center is terminated, effective immediately. You violated 3 separate protocols. You administered unauthorized treatment. You used hospital resources without approval. And you directly disobeyed a transfer order from administration." "I saved a child's life," Kezia said. "You overstepped your authority. He was 6 years old, Mr. Holt. He was dying. And he was not your patient to save." The words hit her like a slap. She looked down the hallway. Room 811. The door was closed. Behind it, a 6-year-old boy was sleeping, breathing, alive, because of what she had done 7 hours ago. And 40 feet from that door, pressed flat against the wall like he was trying to vanish into it, a man was watching. He was lean, quiet. He wore the dark green coveralls the janitorial staff wore. His skin was a deep, rich brown, warm and dark as good earth. His face was long and angular, cheekbones high, eyes deep-set, dark. Not flat like Preston's, but deep. The kind of eyes that had survived things most people only read about. His hair was cut low, graying at the temples. His hands were rough, calloused. He held a mop handle like it was the only thing keeping him standing. His name tag said Janitorial Services in letters so small you had to squint. His name was Darius Wynn. He was the night janitor on the 8th floor. He was also the boy's father. And he was watching every single second. Kezia didn't look at him. She couldn't. If she looked at the father of the child she had just been fired for saving, she would break. And she had promised herself a long time ago that she would never break in front of a man who didn't deserve her tears. She turned back to Preston. 11 years, she said. "You're throwing me away for doing my job." "Your job," Preston said, stepping closer, "is to follow orders, not play hero." He turned and walked down the hallway. His polished shoes clicked on the linoleum like a metronome counting down the end of something. The security guard handed Kezia a cardboard box. The kind they give you when they don't want you coming back. She took it. She walked past room 811. She didn't stop. She didn't look in. But her hand reached out, and her fingers brushed the door, just barely, as she passed. Inside that room, a 6-year-old boy named Theo Wynn was breathing. Because of her. And that was enough. But this story doesn't start here. It starts 15 hours earlier. In the rain. At the back entrance of a hospital that was about to become the most important building in 4 people's lives. Some people walk into a hospital expecting to be saved. Some walk in praying for a miracle. Some walk in carrying one. It was 10:12 p.m. on a Wednesday when Darius Wynn carried his son, through the emergency entrance of Riverside Children's Medical Center. The rain was coming down hard. Not Atlanta drizzle. Atlanta fury. The kind of rain that bends trees and floods parking decks and turns the streets into rivers. Darius was soaked. His green coveralls were black with water. His shoes left puddles with every step. But he wasn't thinking about the rain. He was thinking about the boy in his arms. Theo was 6 years old. Small for his age. His skin was the same deep brown as his father's. His face was round and soft where his father's was angular and worn. His eyes, usually wide and full of questions, were closed. His breathing was shallow. Too fast. Wrong. He had been sick for 4 days. Darius had done everything he knew. Cool cloths. Children's medicine from the corner pharmacy. Prayers whispered over the boy's bed at 3 in the morning in a language he hadn't spoken in years. But the fever wouldn't break. And tonight, Theo had stopped eating. Then he stopped talking. Then he started shaking. Darius had no car. He picked up his son, wrapped him in a blanket, and ran 5 blocks through the storm. The emergency room was chaos. A highway accident had brought in 6 people 2 hours earlier. Every bed was full. Every nurse was moving. The triage desk was backed up 3 deep. Darius stood in the middle of all of it, holding his son, and said the only words he could find. "Please, my son. He can't breathe right. Please help." The triage nurse looked at him. She saw the coveralls. She saw the rain. She saw no insurance card, no ID band, no paperwork. She hesitated. Then she called for a bed. A doctor came within minutes. He listened to Theo's chest. He frowned. Pneumonia, both lungs advanced. He needs 4 antibiotics, imaging, and ICU monitoring. The doctor looked at the chart. No insurance? No, Darius said. The doctor paused. He wrote something down. "I'll get him started on fluids and a first round of antibiotics. But you'll need to speak with admissions." Darius nodded. He didn't understand everything. But he understood started. He understood someone was helping his son. What he didn't understand, what nobody told him, was that 30 minutes later, a flag would appear on Theo's chart in the hospital system. A red flag. 2 words. No coverage. And that flag would land on the desk of the man who cared about numbers more than children. Kezia Malone had been a nurse at Riverside for 11 years. She started at 22, straight out of nursing school, working days in the adult ward. By 25, she'd moved to pediatrics. By 27, she was the lead night nurse on the 8th floor. She was 33 now, 5'4", slim but steady, the kind of person who looks like they'd bend in a strong wind but never does. Her skin was a warm golden brown. Her eyes were large and dark, the kind that made frightened children trust her within seconds. She wore her hair natural, tight coils cut close to her head. She didn't look like someone who fought. Everyone on the 8th floor knew she was. Kezia had grown up in Decatur. Her parents had come from Addis Ababa before she was born. Her father drove for a rideshare company for 19 years. Her mother cleaned office buildings at night. They had taught her 2 things. Work harder than everyone in the room, and never walk past someone who needs help. She had never walked past anyone. At 11:30 p.m., the call came from the ER. A 6-year-old boy, pneumonia, both lungs, being transferred to the 8th floor for 4 antibiotics and monitoring. Kezia prepped the bed in room 811 herself. She set the 4-line. She adjusted the monitors. She dimmed the lights so they wouldn't be harsh on a scared child's eyes. When the orderlies wheeled Theo in, Kezia was at the door. The boy was barely conscious. His eyes fluttered open. He saw Kezia's face. He saw her smile. And his small hand reached out from under the blanket and grabbed the hem of her scrub top. He didn't let go for 25 minutes. Darius walked behind the stretcher. Still wet. Still shaking, but not from cold. From fear. "I am his father," he said. "Darius. His name is Theo." Kezia looked at him. She saw the coveralls, the rough hands, the terror in those deep-set eyes. And she saw something else. Something she recognized from her own father's face a long time ago. The look of a man who would die for his child without thinking twice. "Mr. Wynn," Kezia said gently. Theo is going to be okay. I'm going to take care of him. I promise. Darius looked at her. He didn't have the words for what he felt, so he just nodded, and his eyes filled. Kezia worked through the night. She checked Theo's oxygen every 15 minutes. She adjusted his when his small veins struggled. She held his hand when he cried in his sleep. She hummed something soft and low, a melody her mother used to sing when the world felt too big. By 3 a.m., the fever had dropped. By 4:30, his breathing had steadied. By 5:45, his eyes opened. He looked at Kezia and whispered one word. Thirsty. Kezia smiled so wide her face hurt. She got him water in a small cup with a straw and held it while he drank. Darius was asleep in the chair beside the bed, his mop propped against the wall, his head tilted at an angle that would hurt later. Kezia draped a blanket over his shoulders without waking him. She didn't know who he was. She didn't ask. She saw a father. That was enough. Preston Holt arrived at 7:30 a.m., same spot, same door, same briefcase, same black coffee in a mug he had never once washed. He had been hospital administrator for 3 years. Before that, he had run a regional urgent care network. His whole career was built on one principle. A hospital that loses money closes, and a closed hospital saves nobody. It was a reasonable principle. It was also the kind of principle that made it easy to stop seeing patients as people. At 8:20 a.m., his assistant placed the overnight admissions log on his desk. 14 patients. His eyes stopped on one entry. Wynne, Theodore. Age 6. Bilateral pneumonia. Insurance, none. Payment source, unverified. Admitted, 11:41 p.m. Floor 8. Room 811. Preston picked up his phone. 5 minutes later, he was speaking to the day shift charge nurse. Room 811. The Wynne boy, who authorized extended treatment. Nurse Malone administered care based on the ER doctor's initial orders. No separate authorization from an attending physician on record. So she treated an uninsured patient with no attending sign-off and no financial clearance? The child was critical, Mr. Holt. Get me his file. Preston pulled up the numbers. For antibiotics, monitoring, imaging, bed occupation, nursing hours, $11,000 and climbing. For a patient with no way to pay, he drafted a transfer order. Theo Wynne would be moved to Grady Memorial, the county hospital, effective immediately. Grady was good. Grady was public. Grady handled uninsured patients. Grady was also 51 minutes away by ambulance. Moving a 6-year-old with bilateral pneumonia mid-treatment was not risk-free. Preston didn't think about the risk. He thought about the $11,000. He sent the transfer order at 9:15 a.m. Kezia's shift had ended at 7 a.m. She hadn't left. She told herself she was finishing her charting. But the truth was, she couldn't walk away from room 811 until she knew Theo was stable. At 9:22 a.m., the day shift charge nurse came to her with the transfer order. Kezia read it twice. He's on his second round of 4 antibiotics. His oxygen just stabilized 3 hours ago. You cannot move him mid-treatment. That's what the order says. The order is wrong. The charge nurse looked at her. Kezia, it came from Preston's desk. I know who it came from. I also know that boy's lungs are barely holding. A 50-minute ambulance ride could crash his oxygen. He needs at least 20 more hours of continuous IV therapy before transport is even an option. There's no attending on his chart. That's the problem. He fell through the system. Came in through the ER at midnight with no paperwork. Then I'm going to find one. Dr. Adiz Obi was the only pediatric specialist on call that morning. 43 years old. Born in Enugu, Nigeria. Raised in Charlotte. 8 years at Riverside. Brilliant. Respected. Known for exactly one thing. She did not play politics. Kezia found her in the doctor's lounge with green tea and a stack of charts. Dr. Obi, I need you to look at room 811. 6-year-old boy, bilateral pneumonia, mid-treatment. Administration wants to transfer him to Grady. No attending on record, no insurance. Dr. Obi put down her tea. Show me. They walked to room 811 together. Theo was awake, sitting up against the white sheets, for line trailing from his hand. Darius sat beside him, holding his other hand. Dr. Obi examined the boy, listened to his lungs, checked his charts, checked his oxygen saturation. Then she turned to Kezia. This child is not stable for transfer. Moving him now carries serious risk. I'm signing his chart as attending physician and ordering continued treatment. She pulled out her pen and signed. Kezia felt her chest unlock. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm just doing what anyone with a license and a conscience would do. 15 minutes later, Dr. Obi's phone rang. Preston Holt. Dr. Obi, I see you've added yourself to the chart for room 811. Yes. That patient has no financial clearance. I issued a transfer order, and I've countermanded it on medical grounds. The child is not stable for transport. Doctor, this is an administrative decision. Mr. Holt, the day you have a medical degree, you can make medical decisions. Until then, my patient stays. She hung up. Preston sat at his desk for a full minute without moving. Then he opened his email and typed one line to HR. Pull the employment file for Kezia Malone, pediatric unit, night shift. Nobody ever wondered why a man with hands like his was pushing a mop. Darius Wynn had worked as the night janitor on the 8th floor of Riverside Children's Medical Center for 2 years. He arrived at 10 p.m. He left at 6 a.m. He mopped the halls. He emptied the trash. He cleaned the bathrooms. He restocked the paper towel dispensers. He did it all in silence, with his head down, and nobody ever looked at him twice. The other janitorial staff knew 3 things about him. He was from Atlanta originally. He had a young son, and he never talked about his life before this job. What they didn't know could fill a library. Darius Wynn had been born in Vine City, Atlanta. His father had worked at a bottling plant. His grandfather had driven trucks, but Darius hadn't done either. By 24, he had started a logistics and warehousing company out of a rented garage in East Point. By 27, he owned 4 warehouses. By 31, Wynn Logistics was operating in 11 states, with contracts tied to 2 major national retailers and a federal supply chain partnership. He was worth just under $800 million. Then his wife died. Nadia, 29 years old. A brain aneurysm. No warning. No chance. She was there on a Tuesday morning and gone before noon. Something broke in Darius that day. Not the kind of break that heals with time. The kind that reshapes everything permanently. He handed day-to-day operations to his operations director. He took Theo, then 3 years old, and he walked away from the building with the glass walls and the corner office and the board meetings. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to feel what it felt like to be nobody, to have nothing, to see exactly how the world treated a man in coveralls who held a mop. He found out. The world treated that man like furniture, like a shadow, like something you step around on your way somewhere important. But there were exceptions. There was the cafeteria worker who always saved him a warm plate after midnight when the kitchen was supposed to be locked. There was the security guard who called him by his first name every single night and actually meant it. And there was the nurse on the 8th floor. The one who said, "Good evening, Mr. Wynn," every single night. Not because she had to, because she saw him. Kezia. She was the only person in that hospital who called him by his name. For 2 years, he had watched her work. He watched her hold children's hands during blood draws. He watched her stay past her shift to sit with a crying parent. He watched her sing softly to sick kids in a voice that somehow made the machines seem quieter. And when Theo's fever turned dangerous, when the world narrowed to one terrified prayer, there was never a question where Darius would go. He went to the place where Kezia worked, because she was the only person in this city he trusted with his son's life. Now, sitting in room 811, holding Theo's hand while the boy slept, Darius had heard everything. He'd heard the charge nurse talking about the transfer order. He'd heard Kezia refuse. He'd heard Preston Holt's name spoken like a verdict. And he'd heard the whispers in the hallway when people thought no one was listening. She's done. Holt is going to fire her. Over saving a kid? over not following his order. Darius looked at his son. Theo's chest rose and fell. Steady. Even. Alive. Then Darius looked at the mop propped against the wall. The green coveralls. The name badge that made him invisible. He thought about the money sitting in accounts in Atlanta and Chicago and London. He thought about the phone in his locker. Not the cracked old phone he kept in his coverall pocket. The other one. The one in the matte black case. The one with 4 contacts saved in it that could move mountains by morning. He reached for his mop. Then he heard footsteps in the hallway. Hard shoes. Fast. Heading toward room 811. Preston Holt was coming. Preston pushed open the door at 1:17 p.m. Behind him stood the day shift charge nurse and a security guard. Kezia was changing Theo's forebag. She turned when the door opened. She saw Preston. She saw the guard. She knew. Ms. Malone. Step into the hallway. I'm in the middle of. Now. Kezia set down the forebag. She looked at Theo. The boy was watching her with wide, scared eyes. She touched his forehead. I'll be right back, sweetheart. She stepped into the hallway. Preston didn't pause. He had a manila folder. He had rehearsed this. Ms. Malone, effective immediately, your employment at Riverside Children's Medical Center is terminated. Unauthorized administration of treatment without attending sign-off. Unauthorized use of hospital pharmaceutical resources. Direct insubordination of an administrative transfer order. You're firing me for saving a dying child. Preston's jaw tightened. I'm terminating you for violating hospital protocol. Theo Wynn would be dead right now if I had followed your protocol. He would have crashed in the back of an ambulance because you wanted to save $11,000. That is not your determination to make. Then whose is it? Because you're not a doctor. You're not a nurse. You don't sit with kids at 3 in the morning when they can't breathe. You sit in an office moving numbers on a spreadsheet and call it healthcare. The veins in Preston's neck stood out against his collar. Your badge, he said. Amara walked out at 1:30 p.m. carrying a cardboard box. A framed photo of her parents. A mug the 8th floor kids had given her 2 Christmases ago. A small succulent that had somehow survived 11 years. And her stethoscope, the one she had bought with her first paycheck. She sat in her car, a 10-year-old Honda Accord with a cracked side mirror, put her hands on the wheel, and cried. Not the quiet kind. The kind that comes from your stomach. The kind that bends you forward and won't stop until there's nothing left. She cried for 11 years of night shifts. For every child she'd held and every parent she'd steadied and every morning she'd driven home at 7 a.m. too exhausted to change out of her scrubs. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she started the car and drove home. In the janitor's closet on the 8th floor, Darius opened his locker. He reached past the clean coveralls, past the lunch bag, past the cracked old phone. He reached to the very back, behind a folded towel, and pulled out a phone in a matte black case. He hadn't touched it in 5 months. He powered it on. For contacts, he pressed the first one. It rang once. Darius. The voice on the other end was careful. Alert. Like a man who had been waiting for a call he never expected to come. What's wrong? Trey. I need you to listen. Trey Wynn, Darius's younger brother. 42 years old. Current COO of Wynn Logistics. Managing operations across 11 states and $800 million in assets. Currently sitting in a conference room in Atlanta at 1:45 in the afternoon. Excusing himself from a meeting the moment he heard his brother's voice. I'm listening. I need the jet at DeKalb Peachtree Airport. Tonight. And I need you to find out who owns Riverside Children's Medical Center. The full corporate structure. Every board member. Every stakeholder. Silence. Darius. My son was dying. A nurse stayed and saved him. They fired her for it. And the man who fired her runs this hospital like it's a warehouse. 3 seconds of silence. How much are you willing to spend? Whatever it takes to put someone new in that chair by Friday. And the nurse. Darius looked at the mop in the corner. The coveralls hanging on the hook. The name badge that had made him invisible for 2 years. The nurse, he said quietly. is the only person in this building who ever called me by my name. He hung up. Then he went back to room 811, sat down beside his son, and held the boy's hand. Theo opened his eyes. Dad, I'm here. Is the nice nurse coming back? Darius looked at the door. He thought about the sound of Kezia's footsteps disappearing down the hallway. The sound of someone walking away from the place they had given everything to. Yes, he said quietly. She's coming back. Kezia didn't sleep that night. She lay in her apartment in East Atlanta, staring at the orange lines the street light threw across her ceiling, trying to imagine what she would do tomorrow. 11 years. No job. 4 months of savings. A nursing license that might now carry a mark on it if Preston pushed the violations to the state board. At 33, she might be starting over from nothing. Her phone buzzed at 6:22 a.m., unknown number. Ms. Malone, please don't go anywhere this morning. Someone is coming to you. A friend. She stared at it, almost deleted it. But some feeling she couldn't name, made her put the phone down and wait. At 7:50 a.m., a black Suburban pulled into her parking lot. The driver stepped out in a dark suit. He walked to her door and knocked. Ms. Malone. Yes. My name is Marcus. I've been asked to bring you to DeKalb Peachtree Airport. Someone would like to speak with you. Who? The father of the boy you saved. Kezia's knees went soft. She got dressed. She put on the nicest thing she owned. A deep blue blouse and black slacks, and the only heels she hadn't worn since her cousin's graduation. She got in the car. They drove north through Atlanta, past the neighborhoods she had driven through 1,000 times on her way home from night shifts. The city looked different in the morning light. Sharper, like it was showing her something she'd never noticed before. They turned into a private gate at DeKalb Peachtree, past a security checkpoint, onto the tarmac. And there it was. A Gulfstream G700, white with a thin gold stripe down the fuselage. The morning sun hit it and the metal gleamed like it was made of light. It was the most beautiful thing Kezia had ever seen. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, in a suit she had never seen him wear, was Darius Wynn. He was the same man. Still tall, still angular, still had those deep-set eyes and the gray at his temples. But he was standing differently, shoulders back, chin level, hands at his sides open and still. He wore a navy suit, perfectly tailored, and a white shirt with no tie. His shoes were polished to a mirror finish. He didn't look like a janitor. He looked like someone who built things. Beside him stood 3 people. A woman with a legal pad, a man with a briefcase and an earpiece, a younger man holding a tablet. Kezia stepped out of the Suburban. Her heels clicked on the tarmac. The airfield wind caught her blouse. She looked at Darius and didn't understand what she was seeing. Mr. Wynn, she said. He walked forward, stopped 3 feet from her, looked at her with those bottomless eyes. Ms. Malone. Kezia. I need to tell you something I should have told you 2 years ago. The wind went still. My name is Darius Wynn. I am the founder and majority owner of Wynn Logistics. We operate in 11 states. I have built supply chains that move more product in a single week than most companies see in a year. I am worth more money than I know how to spend. Kezia's lips parted. No sound came out. For the past 2 years, I have mopped the floors of Riverside Children's Medical Center. I wore coveralls. I emptied trash cans. I cleaned bathrooms. I did it because I needed to understand what the world looks like when you have nothing. I needed to remember what my parents knew, that the only wealth that matters is how people treat you when they think you can't do anything for them. He took 1 step closer. For 2 years, you were the only person in that hospital who said my name. Not hey, not janitor, not nothing. You said, "Good evening, Mr. Wynn," every single night. Not because you had to, because you saw me. Kezia's eyes were filling. And when my son was dying, when the whole world narrowed down to 1 room and 1 prayer, you stayed. You held his hand. You sang to him. And you risked everything you had built to keep him alive when a man in a suit told you to let him go. His voice cracked. Just barely. Just enough. I can never repay you for my son's life. But I can do this. He turned to the woman with the legal pad. Brianna. She stepped forward. Ms. Malone. As of 5:30 this morning, Mr. Wynn has acquired a controlling interest in Riverside Children's Medical Center through a purchase of its parent company's healthcare division. The acquisition includes full operational authority. Kezia grabbed the side of the Suburban. Her legs weren't working. The hospital's board has been reconstituted, Brianna continued. Preston Holt's contract has been terminated. A new administrator will be appointed within the week. Kezia looked at Darius. You bought the hospital. I bought the hospital. Because they fired me? Because they tried to let my son die. And the only person who stood in the way was a nurse who makes $54,000 a year and drives a Honda with a cracked mirror. Kezia's hand went to her mouth. The tears came. Not the painful kind from yesterday. The kind that come when the world suddenly makes sense in a way you never expected. There's one more thing, Darius said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white card. Kezia took it. She read it. Kezia Malone, RN, Director of Nursing, Pediatric Services, Riverside Children's Medical Center. The position was just created, Darius said. It reports directly to the new board. No administrator can override your medical decisions. Ever. Kezia looked at the card. She looked at Darius. She looked at the jet. She looked at the sky. Then she started laughing. The kind of laugh that comes out when you've been holding so much for so long that letting go is the only thing left to do. Darius smiled. White, warm, full of something that looked like sunlight after 4 days of clouds. Mr. Wynn, Kezia said through her tears. Your son asked me last night if the nice nurse was coming back. What did you tell him? I didn't know the answer. She pressed the card against her chest. But now I do. Preston Holt was at his desk at 7:30 a.m. Same spot. Same door. Same briefcase. His assistant knocked at 7:36. Mr. Holt. There's a call from the board. He picked up the phone. The call lasted 87 seconds. When it ended, Preston sat very still. The color left his face. His jaw, that clean-cut jaw, went slack. His flat eyes blinked 4 times fast. Like a machine receiving information it wasn't built to process. The hospital had been sold overnight. His position had been eliminated. He had 30 minutes to collect his personal belongings and leave the building. He stood up. He looked at his mug with the hospital logo. He looked at his leather briefcase. He looked out the window at the parking lot below, where a black Suburban was idling near the entrance. He left the mug. He took the briefcase. He walked out of Riverside Children's Medical Center for the last time. Nobody said goodbye. 6 weeks later, a small ceremony was held on the 8th floor. The pediatric wing was being renamed. A new plaque was being mounted beside the elevator. The Theo Wynn Pediatric Wing. Because every child deserves someone who stays. Kezia stood in front of it with tears on her face and her old stethoscope, the one she had bought with her first paycheck, around her neck. Beside her stood Dr. Adiz Obi, newly named Chief of Pediatric Medicine. Behind them stood Darius, in a simple gray suit, holding Theo's hand. The boy was healthy, full cheeks, bright eyes. He was wearing a small blazer that was slightly too big and kept tugging at the sleeves. The staff lined the hallway. Nurses, doctors, orderlies, the cafeteria worker who saved warm plates after midnight, the security guard who called everyone by their first name. All of them clapping. Theo tugged on Darius's hand. Dad, is this our hospital? Darius looked at Kezia. She looked back at him. Something passed between them. Not words. Not a promise. An understanding. The kind that only comes when two people have both been invisible and have both been seen by each other. No, Darius said to his son. This is her hospital. Darius Wynn could have saved his son 1,000 different ways. He had the money. He had the power. One call and there would have been a team of specialists there within the hour. But he didn't call. Because he needed to know. He needed to see who would help when there was nothing to gain. Who would stay when staying cost everything. Kezia Malone didn't save Theo because she knew who his father was. She didn't refuse the transfer because she was calculating a reward. She did it because a 6-year-old boy grabbed her scrub top and wouldn't let go. She did it because that's who she is. And fate saw the whole thing. It didn't rush. It didn't shout. It just waited. And when the time was right, it landed on a tarmac in Atlanta, in the morning light, in the shape of a private jet that brought a janitor's truth into the open. The proud walk out alone. The ones who stay, fate holds on to.